All right, we're going to get started here. People are still joining, but that's all right. This will be recorded, and you can access it afterwards as well. So today we have a webinar over Locavore.Guide, which we have kind of hyped up in the past with some podcasts and whatnot, but we have today hosting is Brian Clark. He's the Assistant Director of Marketing with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, and also Matt Harlow. He works with DJ Case and Associates, and they're going to take us through their big project that they're finally getting to showcase and show everybody. It looks really good. Go ahead and use the chat box in the lower right-hand corner to ask any questions you have throughout the presentation. They're going to go for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to do 30 minutes of question and answer. So go ahead and type your questions in there. I'm going to mediate the question and answer session afterwards. So your question should be answered. If not, we'll send them to the presenters afterwards, and they can reach out to you individually. But without further ado, Brian and Matt, you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, and we'll get started here. Brian, go ahead.
I guess I'll go ahead. Hi.
Yeah, Matt, I guess we'll start there.
From DJ Case. Brian, are you back?
It doesn't sound like it.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me now?
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Okay, great. Yeah, so anyway, I'm Brian Clark. I'm an Assistant Director with the Marketing Division of Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Brian, you still there?
Yes, can you hear me, Marty?
Sorry for the technical difficulties. Yep. You there, Brian?
Yeah, can you hear me, Marty?
Sorry. Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. All right, so it's Brian Clark. I'm an Assistant Director for the Marketing Division of Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I serve as Project Manager on this project.
And I'm Matt Harlow from DJ Case and Associates, where I'm an engagement strategist. And I worked with the team at DJ Case to pull the web end of the project together, and we're going to walk through that in a little bit.
Fantastic. Well, I think what we'll do is provide a little background about the project, and then we'll spend the lion's share of our time, as Matt mentioned, walking through the website, which is the repository for all of our resources that were produced through the project. So this project was conceived as a project or a concept through the Southeastern Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies R3 Committee, the Hunting, Fishing, and Wildlife Recreation Participation Committee, back in 2013. And we had some discussions on this topic, and actually some of our states had done some pilot outreach already in some population centers for a couple of reasons, based on, first of all, some growing interest and even contacts from different locavore communities or people from non-traditional backgrounds who were interested in learning to hunt and fish, but we didn't have an avenue for adult recruitment, especially to non-traditional audiences. And then also there had been efforts on the part of some of our states across the U.S. really, but also in the Southeast, to do some preliminary research into this potential market or interacting with these communities to find out what the potential was for us to grow our participant base. Some of us had proposed with responsive management, for example, some grant concepts, but had never been funded previously, and so we decided to put forward another grant proposal, and this time not focused strictly on research, but also build in some practical test runs, if you will, or pilot tests, and then also using that and some of our own experiences and the best available technology, build some resources that would be of assistance to us, the agencies and our partners who would be interested in doing this kind of outreach for hunting and fishing recruitment and retention in the future. And so with the multi-state grant process, it's always advantageous to reach out to numerous partners, to collaborate, to increase the capacity of a project and also its impact. And so we initially reached out to the MAFA, the Midwestern Association's R3 committee, which readily welcomed the project idea and partnered with us in advancing the proposal. We also reached out to some other partners, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, Archery Trade Association, Wildlife Management Institute, Matt Dunphy, which folks here are very familiar with, and our foundation in Kentucky to help us with potential funding and grant management issues, the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And we proposed this project in 2013, and fortunately we had support from directors in our regions. And I want to give a special call out, thank you to Dan Forster from Georgia DNR, who then was president of CFWA and developed buy-in for us among all the CFWA directors to put this project forward. So we thankfully were funded, and I'll talk about the objectives of the project in just a moment, but just to give the Wildlife and Sport Fish Restoration Program a kudos. This program was a multi-state conservation grant. The award number is F14AP000160, and we're supposed to acknowledge the program for any presentations or products that we deliver, and so want to give them their due. I mentioned the project team members earlier. Also want to give a shout out to our steering committee members who did a lot of legwork throughout the project over the last 3 years, but especially on the front end. Those include Walter Lane, who is our grant manager. He is a hunter development manager in Georgia. Again, I served as project manager. I'm with Kentucky Fish and Wildlife. Barb Geiger, who is with Iowa DNR, she is or served as our aquatic ed resource person or expert. Keith Warnke with Wisconsin DNR, who's a hunter development specialist there and served as a great resource and expert for us on that topic. And then also Brian Blank, who serves with me here in Kentucky, who has a tremendous background in the industry and marketing. So he was a marketing resource person on our steering committee as well. The objectives of our project were several. One was, as I mentioned earlier, not only to develop a body of research and then base our tools or any products that we develop on good science and best available information to date. We also wanted to have some pilot programs to test out states' approaches and some of the resources that we were developing. And so we proposed to call out or reach out to all the states, which we did, and invite them to propose or to apply to be official pilots in this project. And that would both, being a pilot, both committed them to carrying through some kind of outreach, and it could be very simple or very complex, and some of our pilots were, but basically outreach to people from non-traditional backgrounds, specifically young adults with food motivations, and target the recruitment or the marketing efforts to people with food motivations using all available means at their disposal to do that. So we tried to solicit at least four different states, and as many as 10 from around the country to participate as pilots. We attempted to get representation from all the different AFWA regions, all 4 regions, which we succeeded in having 3 of those represented, the Western, Midwestern, and Southeastern. And then also we stipulated for the states that if they had already engaged in some kind of a local and sustainable foods outreach or programming in the past, that they focus on a new population center so we can kind of test the ground or test the waters in a new area, and therefore help us to measure, quantify as well as qualify the kind of feedback or response that we received from this kind of outreach. We also, one of our objectives, wanted to survey participants before and after their participation in whatever kind of program the state and the partners in that state that were involved in their pilot put together, before the program, after the program, and then after the hunting or fishing season that they got involved in or participated in. So we wanted to find out what their experience was and their opinions were going into the pilot programs, and then how it affected them coming out, and then did they go on to participate through that hunting or fishing season. We also stipulated that instructors and mentors and administrators from these different pilot programs would be surveyed, would be given questionnaires to give us feedback, again, to help build our knowledge base and also build the resources that would be constructed, which ultimately has resulted in the Locavore.Guide website. In addition to these efforts, we also wanted to, in some more quantifiable way, look at the potential market or markets across the entire country. And so we anticipated, and we did follow through on contracting out a market analysis or a market potential analysis. And Southwick Associates was our pick, the contract winner for that project. And so we have a report that's housed on the Locavore.Guide website, and that Matt is going to share at the end of the webinar today via link, a connection to their report. So, and build a resource as a repository of information that states and partners could use for doing this kind of outreach. So if any states out there haven't done this already, built their model, or want to improve upon their model, then they have resources that they can draw upon to do that. And we're seeing a growing number of states getting involved in this kind of outreach. I think everybody on this call or webinar realizes there is significant potential out there, and some forthcoming results that responsive management are going to be sharing out to the industry is showing continued growth in the population of people who are participating in hunting, for example, primarily because of their interest in obtaining local sustainable meat. So I want to also give a call out before we get into the website to all of our pilot states who participated and thank them for following through on their commitments. First of all, Arkansas, which their agency put together a program with partners called Taste of the Outdoors. Wisconsin offered its Learn to Hunt program in a new area. In Kentucky, we hosted a couple of programs, Field to Fork, which is our hunting program, and our Hook and Cook program, which is a fishing and culinary fishing program. Iowa launched its Edible Outdoors program in a new area. South Dakota hosted a Hunting for Sustainability, or Hunting 101 for Adults program. And then last but not least, Wisconsin's Aquatic Ed program launched a Fishing for Dinner program. So we thank all those 5 states and 7 programs for participating as pilots and lending their assistance in a variety of ways, but helping us to build the resources we have here. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to walk us through the Locavore.Guide website, which again was built by DJ Case and Associates and did a fantastic job. On this website, in addition to the specific things or a tutorial he's going to give you, We have summaries of the state pilot programs. So those who are interested in looking at these particular case studies can go and find those and then contact state reps if you want to get additional information. We again have the report on responsive management's administration or assistance with administration and development of surveys and the overview of the results of those. And then the report from Southwick Associates on the markets, not only in general, but also actually calling out what appears to be based on common demographic and interest factors, what appear to be the most fruitful potential sites or population centers in each of our states. They did a great job with using Esri tapestry data to look at, again, demographic factors that were common to all of our pilot participants, and then extrapolate those out to the states and identify at least 3 areas in each state that were potentially really good sites. So Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you to let you walk through, and then we'll allow some time at the end for a Q&A.
Great, thanks, Brian. So what we did at DJ Case was we interviewed some of the either program managers or perhaps the actual educators in the pilot programs. We did 3 online surveys of participants in those pilot programs, and then we did 2 focus groups of Locavore influencers, authors, bloggers, people like that, and 2 more focus groups of actual locavores. And we took all that and we rolled it with existing R3 knowledge and theory. And what we determined, first of all, is that rather than creating another binder to sit over everybody's desk, we would put it all online where everyone could get to it. And before I forget, when we're done, Marty's going to send everyone, I call it a handout, even though it's just a PDF, but it has links in it to everything we're going to see today and some of the things that Brian talked about as well, so that you don't need to scramble and jot those links down as things go past. So on Locavore.Guide, we have 4 distinct sections. One section is on instructors, and it's about adult learning theory and how locavores are different than the traditional R3 crowd or the hunter ed crowd that we're used to. And what we learned very quickly was the people that are involved in hunting and fishing education, they know how to teach people how to hunt, where to put a tree stand, how to load your weapon, things of that nature. But what they aren't necessarily ready for is how different this locavore crowd is than the traditional R3 crowd, like I said a minute ago. Very urban, highly likely to have not maybe had that much outdoor experience, very likely to have never hunted. So we included this instructor section that has a lot of content to help either you train instructors or instructors to train themselves, depending on how your program's oriented. We have another section on recruiting, and what we concentrate on here is really 2 major things. One is understanding the different groups of people that you might come in contact with in a locavore program, what food-motivated new adult hunters are like. Potentially, there's a fair amount of women involved in the locavore movement. So it could be that an instructor's not used to teaching women how to hunt or fish. We've got some content on that. And we've also got some content on literally how to market your program. And then the last thing is this cooking resources section. And it's just chock full of recipes and game processing tips and things like that that you can use to educate and keep these food-motivated locavores interested in the program. Then we've got fishing content. We won't talk too much about that today, but it's there for your associates across the aisle. And where we'll dig in deep is hunting content. So what you'll find in the site is there are 175 plus articles. And again, what we did is we talked about how this content, it might be different because you're dealing with a different population than you're used to. Issues like firearms, the blood and guts involved in processing game, the concept of killing are all things that you may have to help these locavores over. And on top of that, again, unlike most hunter ed types, these people are quite likely adults. They could be in their 30s or even in their 50s or 60s. So we included here some information on adult learning theory as well. So what you've got is you've got a series of articles, 175 articles. There are some links in the articles, and then down at the bottom of every article are these resources. And there are over 500 resources on the site. They could be PDFs, they might be PowerPoints, they could be things you'd want to hand out in class, articles, links, checklists, just about anything. So here, for instance, is an article from Outdoor Life, and that resource is right there available for you. You don't need to hunt them down. They're essentially organized into a rough outline of what we believed your curriculum would be. On top of that, what we discovered very quickly is part of the program was originally that we might have to produce some video to fill in the gaps in what's out there in field skills. And what we discovered very quickly is anything in the area of field skills is already on YouTube 15 times. So what we did was we created 2 YouTube channels. The first YouTube channel is just educational material about hunting and fishing. So it's called Hunting and Fishing for Locavores, and some of the playlists that are in there are whitetail deer, field retrieval, whitetail deer, firearm safety, panfish for bluegills, just about any kind of content that you'd want to see. Here's all of the playlists. Oops, that's not good. All of the playlists just about whitetail deer would have popped up there if we had not had that error. But anyway, what we've got here is content that you can do one of 2 things with. You can either say to your students, hey, here's this YouTube channel, go look around, or you could create your own YouTube channel and only move the things over to it that you want your students to see, in essence creating a custom YouTube channel with very little work on your part that revolves around your class. That's what this entire program is about, is making it super easy for an educator to get in here, understand what it's like to work with a locavore, and have the content at their fingertips to do that. We also developed a second YouTube channel called Locavore.Guide Train the Trainers, and this is all material to help you get your arms around dealing with either recruiting or working with locavores. So there's sections on women in the outdoors, a section on millennials, a section on food motivations, and then we made some custom videos on recruiting and training instructors, project overview, program planning, and recruiting participants. And while I'm thinking about that, back in the deer hunting section, there's also a program planning section, both in hunting and fishing, so that if you're starting from absolute scratch, we can walk you through the whole program. Or if you only need the curriculum side, you can dive in a little further in and only deal with that issue. Then on top of that, we created several Pinterest boards. As you can see here, whitetail deer hunting, fishing for panfish, cooking venison. We added hunting for wild turkey, cooking wild turkey, bow hunting, crossbow hunting, muzzleloader hunting. Foraging is a real popular topic with locavores. So again, what you've got here is these young professional urban potential people that you're dealing with are super plugged in and very, very into social media. So again, here you've got either Pinterest boards that you can send them to, or Pinterest boards that you can use to fuel a Pinterest board of your own and have everything custom and ready to go. So really, that's about it. And we could dive into the questions if you'd like.
All right, great. Yeah, so thanks, Matt and Brian. That was great. Please, everybody, ask any questions you have in the chat box on the right-hand side, the bottom right-hand side. I'll go ahead and start it off here. Brian or Matt, what has been the response to this website so far? Have you gotten it into the hands of either some potential new recruits that or new participants, or have you gotten it into the hands of some other R3 professionals? Like, what's been the feedback you guys have heard so far?
Brian, would you like me to take that?
I'll let.
I'm going to take that as a
yeah.
yes.
Why don't you go ahead and then I'll jump in and fill in.
Okay. So first of all, it wouldn't do any harm for an actual novice adult hunter or angler to see the site, but it really isn't aimed at them. It is absolutely aimed at the R3 professional and helping them to pull together a curriculum. We've launched it at CIAFWA and at AIM and at the Western and Midwestern AFWA meetings, and the response from the R3 community has been really strong. Everyone seems enthused and seems to feel that there are a lot of very useful resources on here. Brian, have you heard anything else?
Yes, I would echo that, and we also are actually in the process of updating contact information for all the states to be able to send to each of the state points of contact, R3 coordinators or administrators over those programs, the links, which Matt is going to be sharing later. And so that's a forthcoming step we're going to take to try to communicate this out further. But yeah, the preliminary feedback we've gotten so far has been very positive.
Great. Richard?
Oh, and in addition to that,
sorry,
it's Matt again.
Go ahead.
In addition to that, I do get notices all the time from people signing up to follow the YouTube channels or the Pinterest board. So there is some end-user action out there as well.
Great. Richard Zane was wondering, what did the market analysis show?
Yeah, good question. So I'll just hit some highlights, and actually I think Tom Allen from Southwick Associates may be on the webinar. I'm not sure he can chime in, but he might be able to type in some comments. But the high-level things we found were there was a lot of commonality in terms of similar behaviors, things that would be helpful for us in terms of marketing included that there were common threads, high level of participation in hiking and camping, and also, as we might expect, a large percentage of participants across all of our pilots regularly attended or frequented farmers markets, which would indicate not only commonality in behavior, but also good places to go and recruit potential participants in these programs. We found in general, or Southwick Associates found for us, that these folks, in terms of demographic typologies, they were younger, much younger on average than our average participants currently. That is, those we would normally think of as licensed buyers. They were more tech savvy, more highly educated, had more disposable income. And so the things that as agencies might attract us to these folks, say they're mobile, they have discretionary income, they're not dependent on someone else to take them. These are all, I think, very promising attributes that show us that in addition to the growing proportion of people that are hunting for meat and the growing interest out there, these are folks that they're motivated and they're very capable once they have the right information and experience to go and participate. And we've seen in our pilots folks that immediately start recruiting their family members, their children, grandchildren, and take them hunting or fishing. So I think there's a lot of promise there. But that's kind of a highlight or some highlights of things that were real evident in the market analysis. But again, they actually went to the detail of showing a map, showing the sort of hot spots around the country, based on the demographic and behavioral attributes that we were able to identify and that they pulled out from Esri Tapestry data. And then they also specifically called out the top 3 best fits, again, based on our pilot participants in these 5 states and our 7 pilot programs. So states should take a look at that and perhaps target those particular population centers for their initial outreach.
Great. Okay, so David Smith says, incredible content, well done. What restrictions are there when sharing the resources? Specifically, can they be used in any class setting, whether that be public schools, private camps, fundraisers, etc.?
Absolutely, that's the goal.
Yes.
So yeah, use away.
Were these videos made by other people? You just kind of collected them into playlists, or were they produced by you guys?
So there's 2 groups of videos. There's a small group of videos that speaks directly to the trainer. We produced the bulk of those videos as part of the project. The rest of the videos we collected primarily on YouTube and simply linked to them in our own playlists. So from a rights standpoint, these are videos that people obviously want seen. They've put them on YouTube and made them public. And we've simply collected links to them and organized them in topics that move along with the outline of a typical R3 curriculum.
I see. All right. Gus wants to know, are your resources region or age specific?
Yeah, that's a good question. We actually picked as pilot or as the focus examples for the teaching or the educational resources, species that we thought would be most universal. So a lot of this content is not skill specific, or let me say species specific, but that which is very generic in terms of being applicable to most of the country, or there would be species that would be very similar. For example, the videos were focused on white-tailed deer, wild turkey, panfish, and catfish. And so the applicability, whether by species or by sort of guild or type of game or fish, would be pretty common across the country. Matt, do you want to add to that?
There is a sprinkling, too, of some mule deer and elk and a few other, closely related species to help deal with things like the difference in topography out west versus in the Midwest. But I would echo what Brian said. It's a lot of pretty generic content, and when you consider the fact that these people are coming in generally with little or no background, that's what they need, coming out of the gate.
Thanks. Let's see. Gus had a follow-up question. He was looking for some of your links to your Facebook, Twitter pages, etc., and he was wondering if you guys could post those somewhere as well. But let's see here.
Right now, because this is not meant to be end-user outreach, there is no Facebook or Twitter component. But the links to the YouTube and Twitter and Pinterest sections are in that handout that Marty will email out at the end of the meeting.
Great, thanks. All right. So Susan says there are many great video links that you guys have. What criteria did you guys use to choose what videos to include?
So we went through sort of 3 major questions. One was, is the source reasonably credible? And is the material useful? Those were probably the big 2. And then we literally watched every one of them and tried to find a combination of useful material and a lively enough host that it was palatable to watch. Then what we did was batch them up and even try to put each playlist roughly in the order that you should watch them from beginning to end. So there's a lot of work that went into that, and we think it's a lot friendlier than needing to go out and do all that searching yourself.
All right. Kevin Paulson wants to know. He wants to know if he can ask how much it costs to build this program, as well as there being an as well as there going to be an effort to accumulate this information for end users, or are you leaving that up to each state?
Yeah, this is Brian, and we the entire grant project was just under $300,000, so it's $277,000. That includes all of the contract components and then some logistical support, a small amount, but some logistical support to the pilot states if they took advantage of it for helping them to launch or to brand and advertise and that kind of thing, their pilot programs. So all the resources together and the support for the pilots cost that amount. So we are going to allow or leave the tailoring and use at the local level, whether it's a nonprofit or a state agency or a partnership or industry, which we would encourage as well to investigate and use these resources if they can be of help. We'll leave that to you. So we just want this to be, again, a repository of resources that would be helpful. And again, we'd be happy to discuss offline, any ways in which the pilot states might be able to help with that. Obviously, we help one another with lots of different things, and we've drawn from resources that haven't been highlighted here from other states, but were included in the situation analysis, the background research that went into this. So let's all continue to network together and continue to build our experience and knowledge.
Bob Carl wants to know, are you all working with Shane Mahoney on this project to calculate the value of wild game meat?
Not from my end.
No, we didn't specifically address that. It's an interesting question, but it's not something that was within the purview of this project.
Yeah. While we're waiting for some more questions to come in here, I was going to ask, are there any plans or funds for the future of this project? How is it going to look, maybe 5 years down the road? Is it more just kind of like you put together the resources and it's just going to live there on its own, or is it going to be updated and continually added upon and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's our hope. What our steering committee is going to be doing in the near future is working with DJ Case and Associates and our other project partners to discuss that and potentially try to identify some funding going forward to do some updates from time to time. Certainly, states are going to have new resources, new experiences, new products that we'd like to add. And so we welcome, folks can contact me, and my contact information is going to be on the website following this. But feel free to let me know if you have ideas in that regard. We're hoping that some of our project partners will want to continue to invest in this to continue to improve it and build it.
Alrighty. Do you guys on your left-hand side there, you have 5 little tabs. Are those are different from your menu tabs over off to the right. Could you just show the difference there real quick?
Sure. The tabs here on the left are real generic. There's some instruction on how to use the site. This is actually repeated at the beginning of every section, but it's there too. An introduction so that we didn't have to repeat it everywhere. Acknowledgements. Oh no, what's in a term? What we did discover is there's some resistance among locavores about being referred to as locavores. We use the noun in the program development because we just needed a word to call these people, but you may not want to do that in person in class.
That's an interesting insight.
And the acknowledgments is everyone that Brian talked about earlier that had a part in pulling the program together in any extent at all.
Thanks. All right, Warner Bars says this is a great value. This is a great valuable resource for those doing R3. Is there any discussion or plans to potentially similar resource for the participants of these programs, i.e. a next steps or resources for the locavores?
There actually are next step sections in both hunting and fishing for different species, different types of hunting, different methods of fishing. They're very superficial at this point, and I think any expansion in that goes in the same bucket that Brian is talking about. We're looking for ways to take this whole program to the next step, whether that is end user facing material or more material like this on, say, turkeys or some different species. And we need to figure all that out.
Jumping back to one of the last questions, Allie was wondering, what do you call locavores if they don't like to be called locavores?
Well, once they're in the classroom, then you can just say you. You don't need to necessarily label them. Just like if you had women and men in a hunter ed class, you wouldn't say, all you ladies, and then bring up some point. So it's just like any other hunting education program once you've got them in the room. And the trick here is to do marketing that would appeal to a locavore, and they'll find you without your needing to refer to them with some label. And that's what we talk about in the recruiting section of the site.
That's a good segue in. I'll make a couple of quick points, if I may. One is you may find it challenging the first, just as this is from our 6 years of doing this kind of outreach in a couple of population centers, Louisville and Lexington, Kentucky. Our first year was a little challenging to fill up our class, but over time with word of mouth, if you reach out to your past participants, you'll find they will network their contacts, other locavores or people with similar interests, and you will fill up any programs, however they may be structured going forward. We get a lot of our participants from referrals, word of mouth. The other thing I will say is, and I think we've all seen this, folks that have had these kind of programs or pilots, is that you will have a component. It may be a large percentage, it may be a moderate percentage, but you'll have a component of your target audience that are coming, that participate, but you'll have other folks who have different motivations. I mean, not that they're not at all food motivated, but their primary motivation may be something different. It may be experience oriented, adventure, knowledge. They may have retired and they're looking for new, hobby, pastime, something healthy. So there's a lot of different motivations, and there has been some work published on this. I know Keith Warnke's made a presentation at a Wildlife Society meeting, National Wildlife Society meeting about this, but you have all kinds of different motivations, and just beware they're not all the same. And so to Matt's point, once you get them there, you just treat them like someone who doesn't have experience and background, and don't assume that they have the same interests and knowledge as your typical participant or student, but otherwise you just treat them with respect and go forward with the information and the experience.
We've got about 14 more minutes for any of you that want to ask some more questions down there. We just had one come in from Pat. He asks, have any of the pilot program coordinators in the Southeast done an analysis of the total cost both dollar and volunteer time to host these programs, and the cost per new hunter created similar to what Keith Warnke presented for Wisconsin at the WAFWA conference?
No, you know what? We did not do that quantitatively. That would be a great next step. And something else we do have cost estimates for staff time, volunteer time, the actual physical costs, and all that. And so that definitely is something we're going to look at going forward. Something else that we specifically alluded to in the grant, although it's not within the time frame of the grant, which was a 3-year project, was we were going to come back after 5 years and look at annual participation, and then longer term 5-year participation in through surveys and also license sales of all of our pilot participants. It's something that the pilot states signed on to or opted in for when they volunteered to be pilots. So hopefully we'll get some good information on the back end, even though, like I say, it's a couple of years out from having that. And so we hope to share that information going forward. But yeah, your cost-benefit analysis, definitely, it's a good question. We had, just to throw it out there anecdotally, we had programs that cost as little as $2,000 or $3,000 up to programs that were $20,000 or more. It just depended on the number of staff and partners involved and what the different stages or steps were involved in delivering those programs. The ones that rolled in the instruction, the participation, and all that into a single day obviously were cheaper than the ones that were multi-phased and might have had many different kinds of fishing or hunting involved. So there's a pretty wide range or spectrum in there. And then number of participants varied between, I think our smallest pilot was about 7 people, 6 or 7, and the largest was over the course of a whole season and multiple different opportunities or events, interacted with as many as 150 different people. So there's a lot of variation in there. Probably to give a real robust kind of analysis, we would need a lot more, pilots or data across states.
I was wondering, how are you guys going to measure success of this website? Is it going to be based on how many people come and visit it and take a look, or is it going to be based on an evaluation afterwards to see how much the Locavore market has grown? What's that going to look like?
Yeah, that's another good question. That's not something we specifically addressed in the grant. We did have obviously specific deliverables and results we had to report on. That was not one of them, but it's a good question, and that certainly is a topic that we'll be discussing, the steering committee and partners going forward. And some of those that you mentioned, like the traffic, the feedback or use that we get reported on, would certainly help us to evaluate it and hopefully improve it in the future.
All right, we still got a little bit more time for questions if anybody has some last ones in there that they're looking for. What do you guys think about, you said Allie mentioned something about putting together hunting for non-hunters programs, and she wants to had the idea to go to recruit at some of the larger farmers markets. Are there other resources on other places that she might have success finding these kind of people within the website?
Yes, absolutely. Anywhere, just some off the top of my head, because we know that these people have a tendency to be active in the outdoors. So kayaking groups, hiking groups, things of that nature. Also, some of the programs had luck with supermarket chains or culinary schools that were doing educational programs about wild game, or even pairing a culinary program and a local social group. But if you think about that sort of the nexus of food and the outdoors, that's the place. Foraging programs that might be run by a parks department, I think, would be a gold mine.
True, and Matt and team with DJ Case and Associates did make, iterate a lot of those targets or potential connections for marketing your programs. And similarly, just speaking anecdotally from our experience in Kentucky and some other states, if you go looking for the communications channel, social media, newsletters, e-newsletters, websites that are slow foods, whole foods, organic, local, all those kind of things, you will find lots of resources there in addition to, as you pointed out, the farmers markets, but many of your local businesses are going to be willing to share this information, and some of them might be willing to partner with you for programs because the local wine, your vineyards, your local produce, they're going to be used in preparing meals by these folks, and so they have a vested interest in seeing this kind of a program to prosper. But universities, extension offices, or places where people frequent, are engaged in programming, and university campuses, lots of different places to go.
All right, we got a question here by Pat. Any plans to do analysis of how much time / instruction needs to be done to create a locavore hunter? It would be good to compare full-out multi-day learn-to-hunt programs versus simpler informational outreach programs, inviting people to look into hunting and directing them to resources to learn independently at lower costs to agencies, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say we would welcome that kind of a project, whether it's university initiating that or agencies working together. We don't have specific plans at this time. I know, for example, like the Illinois Natural History Survey just hired a specialist to do some research in this arena and identify best practices, not just anecdotally, but based on research. And there may be other efforts underway in that regard. We know some things, again, anecdotally or qualitatively from our different experiences, but to quantify them, I think would be a good next step, and we would welcome that.
Is there a place that people can go to either submit a research study or something that you guys can include into your website? It might just be emailing you guys, but I was wondering if there was a specific submission place on the Locavore.Guide website people could go to.
No, I think
but I think that's a great idea, and we will add it.
Yeah, good
It sounds
idea.
like a lot of people. It sounds like a lot of people have some really good ideas and cool studies that you guys could put in here. And if they ever went through with those at their own state, they could, submit them to you guys, and you guys can keep updating this really great website here. We got one
Marty,
last question.
Can I interject real quick? Is there an opportunity through the follow-up to the webinar to have a discussion about programs that people have done? Because we're pretty aware between DJ Case and Associates situation analysis and the work that we've done as pilots and networking through the regional associations. We're pretty aware of what's going on out there, but we may have missed some pilot or some other programs that have been done or are being done. Is there a way for folks to just chime in just real briefly, maybe just identify the program, the state, who the partners are, and a link website or something like that?
Absolutely. I would encourage everybody to go to the R3 community website. You can either post it on your own, or I'll make a post here after this just so people don't forget. It'll just be a quick post saying, hey, are there any programs out there that would like to be featured or be looked at for being featured on the Locavore.Guide website, and then people can chime in if they are aware that they're not a part of that, or if they're not a part of your website, they can make sure to get on there. So, all right, cool. One last question here from Kevin Paulson. Would you be willing to work with private industry partners to share this information?
Absolutely. I think, especially with some of the turmoil that's going on with some of the big outdoor retailers right now, that that's a great channel both to reach out um, to the actual locavores, but also to the R3 community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Kevin, feel free. My email address is brian.clark@ky.gov. There is strong industry interest in this. In Kentucky, we've gotten sponsorship from an industry partner already for our Field to Fork program, Mossy Oak, and some other folks are looking to partner with industry in addition to nonprofits. But yeah, we would encourage that, and feel free, as Matt mentioned, use the website, share it, help us improve it, and I know the states want to partner together with everyone that wants to see the needle moved in this area.
All righty. Well, we want to be respectful of everybody's time here. We're going to have to wrap it up, but thank you very much, Brian and Matt. You guys did a great job. It's finally really good to see the website and see all the hard work that you guys put into it. I think that the community is really going to enjoy using this website. It's really well put together, really well laid out, pretty straightforward. Please give them feedback on what you guys think about the website. We're going to be sending out a survey here afterwards, and please give them your feedback. So next month we're going to be doing another webinar. Be looking for that coming through. It's going to be, I think, later in the month, but we're going to get that sent out in the next R3 newsletter. Thanks again, everybody, for joining. Have a great rest of the week, and we will talk to you next time. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.